Hey, folks, this is Bruce Hutchin, host of Hutch on Hunting Podcasts, and we're heading down to Georgia, the backwoods of Georgia, to be exact. And we're going to head to a log cabin that Big Jim has built. And Big Jim is a traditional boyer. Did I say it right? A boer?
Boyer. Yep, Boyer
Boyer.
is right.
So I did say it right. And he builds custom bows, traditional custom bows, and ships them worldwide. Big Jim, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. And we were talking in the warm up as we do to make sure everything's running right. So you live out in the country a little bit, don't you?
Well, sort of. Yeah, it's I could still get to a hardware store in 10 miles, or a McDonald's if I had to, but I live on 42 acres. Um, let's say 5 to 7 miles off the grid
All right.
and enjoy that a good bit.
Now, how long have you been in the business of building traditional bows?
About 16, 17 years.
Now, why'd you start it? What was the motivator?
Uh, I've always been into archery and enjoyed it quite a bit. And even more so when I got into traditional. I'm a do-it-yourself kind of guy. I've been working with woodworking equipment my entire life, and I just kind of like to put more part of me into the things that I do. At the time, around 2008, my construction business was starting to fail because of the issues in 2008, and it seemed like it would be a fairly decent way to make a little money. Um, a little being the key to that phrase, but we do fine at what we're doing. I'm no longer in the construction business. This is all we do. So traditional archery and building bows and things.
Now, how do people find out about you? You've been at the game for a while and you ship globally. So, do they just go to your website or what do they do?
Well, they can buy right off of our website. They can email us or contact us. Website's bigjimsbowcompany.com. Um, Everybody wants word of mouth. I get a lot of that being in the business as long as I have. I travel to a lot of events. I'll see, plus or minus 25 to 30,000 plus traditional archers a year.
Wow.
Um, from Florida up to Michigan and then on over to Pennsylvania. So see a lot of people. I mean, one of those events alone has got between probably 7 and 10,000 traditional archers at it.
Now, do you
The
take a
biggest
booth
event.
with you?
Oh yes, we've got a very big display. I say big display, big for an event.
Yeah.
So I've we pull with my motorhome. I pull a 24-foot trailer that you can shop throughout, and I set up I don't know, probably a 3,000 foot, nah, maybe 2,000 foot tent, and we'll have 300 used bows set up there and a few new ones and arrows and shafts and just about anything you can need for traditional archery.
Oh my goodness. You were
Yeah,
telling me you got a couple, 30 by 50 warehouses and shops. So everything is done right there on your property. And how many presses do you have?
well, each press is independent, so it's not like I take a form or a mold and stick it in a press and then put things together. So each press works all on its own. When we're done getting everything strapped into the press, we pick it up and put it in an oven to bake it, and then get the next press. It's less of a press and more of a form. So you spread the glue on it, put it onto the form, you tape it down, wrap it with plastic wrap to protect the form. Then we put an air hose on top and strap that down and inflate the air hose to do the pressing. So I probably got 16, a dozen to 16 forms. I mean, I haven't counted in a while, and some we don't use much, and some we use nearly every day.
Now, what determines what press you use or form, pardon me, what form you use?
Well, I've got different models of bows. So if you order a Thunderchild, I use a Thunderchild form, or you order a Buffalo, I use a Buffalo form. Um, the recurves, I have a different form for each length, and different recurves. Some are 3-piece, so we just have forms for the limbs. And then the other one I do is a 1 or a 2-piece, and that would be a full length bow form. So you'd have one for each, the 3 different length models I offer, but independent in accordance to model.
Okay, and then you do build takedowns, is that correct?
Oh yes, oh yes. My most popular is a 2-piece. About 80% of the people that order bows from me by their own choice opt to go with the 2-piece. Probably about another 10% go with the 1-piece. I'm sorry. Yeah, 1-piece. Another 10% with a 3-piece. That's rough numbers. I can't say that's accurate every year. Obviously, things change, but you know, they like the way I do the 2-piece.
Now, how many laminations do you have per the bow?
So the models are different. But just in the limbs themselves, there's generally 6 or 7.
Okay.
Um, in a riser could be the handle. It could be 2 or 6, 7 of those per. Just depends on how they're ordered.
Now, who decides what laminations you're going to have and the choice of wood?
So say I was contacting you today to get your build started. I'd call you up and say, hello, sir. I just call and let you know your name's up. You ready? And if you say yes, then I'll start getting the specs, and I'll ask you, well, what model you want and what length, draw weight, 1-piece, 2-piece, right hand. And then, I'm going right down my list. It just so happens I have one here in front of me.
Yeah.
Then I'd ask you if you'd want a custom inscription. We go on to limb veneers. If you can't make up your mind, I'll help out the best I can. And on occasion, or maybe frequently, I get people to say, just build me what you would build for yourself, or build me this or that. And I generally ask for parameters. I don't like dark. I don't like light. I don't like woods that have a reddish tone. And there's quite a few actually, um, undyed woods that can be from a cinnamon color all the way to bright red or orange from nature.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So horn overlays, if I'm asking these questions, and you shoot split finger and 3 under, just so I know how to set the string up, shape of the grip, size of the grip, grip material, meaning do you want a leather wrap on it of some sort or another. I generally use exotics like elephant, giraffe, snapping turtle, beaver tail, for the handle cover. That's a typical bow order. We go through that, and sometimes I get them in 15 minutes, and sometimes it's an hour and a half,
It sounds like you're
or
an
or
artist.
4 days.
Yeah, it sounds like you're an artist. I've never had a traditional bow, so I can't relate to it. So I'm learning as I'm asking questions. I'm going, wow,
Well, I hear that. I hear
this is
artists saying all
involved.
the time. I don't necessarily look at it as that, but I realize, um, it's what I do, and apparently I do it relatively well because I hear it
Yeah.
enough. Try not to be too modest here, but I can't operate a computer worth a flip, so I know I'm the somebody that goes in there and click clack clack, clack, hits a button, goes over to this, never looks like they have to think about it. They're an artist in their own form, I guess. So,
Well, yeah. Now let's talk about price points. What's your entry level for a longbow? And then, if the person just goes buck wild, how much of the money are they going to spend?
so the base price of one of my bows right now is $9.95. Base does not mean plain. I don't offer a lot of real plain stuff. I don't do colored glass because that's not my thing. I've got a Jones for exotic woods and I have a pile of them. And that's what I like to do. So that's what I want to build. And people come to me for that, and I sell wood to other bowyers as well to do the same thing. So, but at $9.95, I've got a few base priced woods that don't cost any extra, yet still look pretty good. But you'd get a one piece, no grip covering, no horn or antler overlays. But other than that, I'll make it as good looking as I can with the materials that you choose. Now, sky is the limit, I suppose, because if you said I want a ruby encrusted gold pendant inlaid into the riser with the hope diamond on top of it, I'll do what I can. Um, but for the most part, you're looking at probably 1,000 to 15, 16, $1,700, just depending on the upgrades. So I get some pretty cool and sometimes strange requests, but I put mammoth ivory on instead of horn tips and overlays. I've done muskox horn, which is kind of unique, not very cheap. Neither is the mammoth, but I guess they're not making any more of it.
No,
So,
that's for sure.
yeah, but I try to make them as custom as somebody wants. I'm more than willing to try new things if people are patient. Got to stay ahead of the Joneses. So with all these new products that they have on the market nowadays to do different things with wood, you know, stabilizing and resin casting and all that, it opens up a lot of new doors for us.
So from start to finish, I'm getting $1,000 bow. And we went through and you got the checklist and you know what it's doing. So at the end of the day, you say, send me a deposit, which I do. And then when can I expect to have that in my hot little hands?
So currently, how I do it is if you want to get on the list, it's $100 deposit. I don't want to know anything about what you want at that time. All I need is good contact information and request people to contact us if they move or their number changes, because quite often they'll forget. I get it because there's a lengthy wait, and then I can't get a hold of them. But so they would get that information, and currently at about a year's time, I'll contact them, and then we go through all this stuff, and it could be another 4 to 6 weeks out to even 12 weeks or more before their bow's done. Just depends on how ornate they want it, how elaborate of a build we're looking at. If somebody wants something extremely unique, maybe I have to find new, different things for it. But generally, I have most stuff on hand. So that 995 basic bow, you're probably looking at 4 weeks if I do it in the late summer and in the fall part of the winter. Otherwise, 6, 8, 10 weeks from in February through August when I'm doing all my traveling for shows.
Okay. So I'm on the list for a year. You call me and then we start to build. Then, depending on the time of year, could be a month or so or longer.
Right. No guarantees ever, just because it doesn't matter what I plan. Somebody kicks a big old monkey wrench right into it.
You
So,
have a flat tire someplace.
yeah, flat tires are pretty small, but I had at the beginning of March, I had COVID. Second time, and since the COVID crap came on, and then I got to get away as well. I had a family reunion, just come back from Cancun a couple of days ago,
Good for
So the
you.
family reunion was wonderful, but you know, people asked me how it went. I said it was too short. It was too long. So, you know, I can get away and have a good time, but after a little while, start inching back towards the shop.
Understood. Understood. So let's switch it up a little bit. You're a master bower and you've been doing it for a while. You got a good reputation in the industry. You're making a living, living there and living off the grid. So let's talk about your hunting. Let's
Okay.
talk, just go back and tell us about
Favorite
your first
subject.
bow hunt.
So my father wasn't into archery. He was a hunter, but he was a large animal veterinarian in Minnesota and had no free time. There weren't enough vets around. He worked 7 days a week. But he saw to it that my older brother, 9 years older than me, would take me out hunting, or, you know, dad was supplying gas money, paying for bait. My brother had to take me hunting. And he was instrumental into getting me into archery. So I was about 10 years old. And for Christmas, I got a Jennings kit bow. And that was the beginning. The first hunt was like most first hunts. You don't see much or anything, but you're excited and you just know the big one's going to come by. And, as what happens thousands of times through the rest of your life, they don't. But that's the anticipation. I had a great time that year for sure. And that just, Minnesota had a long archery season at the time, and still does. Most states do. And just an extremely short gun season. So it was natural for me to want to hunt with a bow more, because you're looking at, I don't know, middle of September to the 10th of December, I think it was at the time, or I could have 2 days to hunt with a shotgun slug. You could do both. Don't get me wrong, you could do both back then, and probably still can. I don't live in Minnesota anymore, but you could only take one deer, and once you did that, you were done. So, you know, archery just gave me a more fulfilling experience.
Now, you also told me you've hunted Mexico, Finland, Africa. You're heading or have hunted Colorado. Tell me where your most favorite hunt is. The
The
location.
next one,
Pardon me?
the next one,
Your next hunt
my
is your
favorite
favorite
hunt is
hunt.
the next one. Yeah. So I have enjoyed myself. I can enjoy myself when we're not seeing animals. As long as we're making effort, I can enjoy myself, of course, when we're getting run over by animals. It's all about having a good time where you're at right then and there. Otherwise, I couldn't imagine how somebody wouldn't be miserable all the time. But to say that one is my favorite, I can't get enough of Africa. It's absolutely wonderful. I've never been over there with a traditional bow, but I shot a compound for 25 years or something like that. And I had a compound over there and took several animals, including a giraffe with a compound. Um, Canada is an awesome place to hunt. Alaska, uh, Finland was kind of different. We weren't really hunting. I mean, we were following dogs and digging holes to pull what they call a soupy. Um, to me, it's just a raccoon that lives in the ground, but they kept telling me it wasn't a raccoon, and hard pressed to get me to believe it. But whatever.
Okay.
Without the striped tails and without the badge on the eyes, the rest of it was identical. But it's the adventure. It's the adventure. That's what it's about. And I did turkey hunt in Mexico last year. I'm hoping to go back, not this year, but the following year. Got a brown bear hunt in June. That's going to be, one of that's a bucket list thing.
Are you going to do with the bow? You taking a bow?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, I love guns. I have lots of guns. My desire to shoot animals with a rifle anymore has withered. Not that I wouldn't still do it, but I'm a shotgunner. You know, that's my gun thing mostly. Love to walk behind a bird dog or shoot ducks and geese with dog. You know, retrieve them. But yeah, as far as it goes, big game. I like the flintlock as well too, so I'll do that. But yeah, this my social media guy got his outfitter's license, and he had been promising me a brown bear hunt. You know, he'd been guiding for some time, but he recently got his outfitter license, so now he can legally take me out. And I am really looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah. Now, where are you going to go up in Alaska? The general region.
That's a good question. I don't know where he baits because this is a baited hunt. It's legal in his zone.
Okay.
In fact, they have so many bears there that he's got a 2 bear unit.
Oh, my goodness.
But I would say that it's somewhere near Palmer. I mean, you know, I write the checks, I don't send them, or I sign the checks, I don't
You
write them.
said it. Yeah.
And so knowing exactly where, and I haven't, he's been inviting me up for years to hunt black bear because he couldn't guide me on a brown bear.
Uh-huh.
And problem is my events go on during the best black bear times, and when I can get free, there's brown bears that have run the black bears off, and I couldn't legally hunt with them on those. So getting up there to do that just didn't work out. But I've been up there, and he and I and one of my employees and a couple of friends, whatever, we did a do-it-yourself moose hunt on a river. That was awesome.
Did you get a
You know,
moose?
it's well, I could have, but that would have meant shooting it with a rifle, and I've already been down that road. Not again, not that I would have a problem doing it again necessarily, but the moose and the bow has been a demon of mine. He's been giving me some issues making it happen.
Yeah.
And so I passed up a moose that ultimately he shot with the rifle, turned out to be 63.5 inches. Not sure how good of an idea it was to pass it up or not.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Size
But
doesn't matter really. I mean, I would have loved to taken it and I would have been proud of it with a rifle, but that's not, I mean, it was the first day of season. I had went through the last day with the
yeah.
bow. That's what I was there to do. Um, Unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, bow hunting saves you a lot of money on taxidermy.
Yes, it does. I
But I
hunted.
do quite well. I do quite well with the traditional. I have taken quite a few animals. In fact, I take more with a longbow or recurve than I ever did with a compound because I'm having more fun. I go more often. Not
Well,
as
and you're
often as
closer
I'd like
too.
to.
Aren't you closer?
You can miss close too. You
Yeah.
know, I would venture to say that in most situations, 300 yards and in with my rifle, I'm taking it home. So to say I'm more successful with the trad because I'm closer, you still got to get them closer.
Yeah.
And with a compound, I when I first started, my compounds were not all that dissimilar than traditional in that, you know, 20 yards is where you wanted to be or in, and things past 30 and 40 give you the heebie-jeebies to trying to make that shot, get an arrow into an animal at that distance. Of course, everything has changed since then, but it's you're shooting closer at the animals, but you still have that demon in your head. Traditional's not that difficult. In fact, it can be quite easy as long as you don't let your head screw you up.
Isn't it all muscle memory? You get to your ankle point and let her fly?
No, not necessarily. There's
Well, tell me about it.
every method of shooting requires aiming of one way or another. I
Okay.
mean, it's semantics. So if I shoot instinctively, basically the way you would aim throwing a baseball, which is how most people describe it, I'm still aiming. I don't think about aiming. I do it subconsciously. Works quite well for a lot of people. Doesn't work very well for other people. I mean, if you don't have confidence, it's not going to work well for you. Then, or, other people like the idea of having a measured aiming system, which means gap typically. At draw, you use your split vision to pick the spot you want to hit on the animal, and the distance between it and the tip of your arrow, that's the gap. And at point on means you put the point right on the spot you want to hit. If my point on is 30 yards or 35 yards or 20 yards, I know to put the point right there. But if the animal's at a different yardage, you may hold over or under, depending. But now you have to know the yardage. Or instinctively, which people have an issue with the name instinctive more than the way that it shoots. It's semantics. But subconsciously, we'll say that your mind is already measuring the distance between you and the animal. And it's through repetition, it's learned the arc of the arrow. And, it requires a bunch of practice, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's not that difficult. It takes a little commitment, but that's the whole point. With a rifle, I go out and I sight it in, and the following day I can hunt, or the same day. Same thing with a crossbow. Almost the same thing with a compound. So preparation, now granted, the more you do it, the more prepared you are for the odd situations that always seem to creep in when you're during a hunt. Got to stretch around this and do that. And, I remember one time in Minnesota, I was standing on a homemade tree stand I had hung and had carpet on it. The carpet was covered in a sheet of ice. And I'm standing on that thing, holding on with dear life with no safety harness at the time, with one leg wrapped around a tree, trying to shoot backwards behind me at one of the biggest bucks I've ever seen in my life. If I let that arrow go and hit that buck, I'd have probably slid right out of that stand. But it never happened. And again, preparation just helps you to be ready for those strange situations. And that's the thing. What fun is it if it doesn't require any preparation? You pick it up, you go out and you hunt. You don't see anything. You come back in. You do that 3 or 4 times in a row, and after a while, the football game looks more exciting. Or whatever. Just sleeping in and taking a nap. Well, it traditional. Most of the guys that really get into this, and it is super addictive. I cannot tell you how many people shoot it for a weekend. They just start selling all their other gear. Not that you have to, but they seem to go that route. But the guys that are really into traditional shoot year round because it's fun. I mean, they don't necessarily shoot year round because they have to do well. They shoot year round because they want to.
One thing I know, whether I'm fly fishing, fishing for tuna, hunting with a rifle or my crossbow or my compound, as I said before, I never hunted traditional. The more repetitions I have, the more I'm familiar with my equipment, the more successful I am as a hunter. No question about it. Then with the guys that I know that shoot traditional, they're year-round addicts. There's this guy up in Boulder called Marv Klenke. I don't know if you ever met
I know,
Marv
Mark.
or
Oh yeah.
heard his name. He's just iconic. And I was on the Bighorn Society board with him, blah, blah, blah. And just the stories he would tell, not about harvesting, but just his stalks, how he stalked with a traditional bow. The best story ever was he was up in the Yukon hunting stone sheep, and they spotted a ram, so he had to go all the way around, and then he finally got above the ram but couldn't see it, and he look with his binoculars across the canyon, and everybody's jumping up and down and pointing right below, just pointing down, just like that. And the ram was bedded right below him. I mean, feet, not yards, feet. And he ended up getting the ram because he just waited until the ram stood up, and then the deal was done. But he says, man, I wish I had that on film. Nobody would have believed it.
Well, I'll tell you what, some of the best stocks ever have no animals even in the area when you get there. You thought there was one there, or whatever. It's so fun to watch because too often it happens and it's over too quickly, and you don't get the opportunity to shoot, which to some people that's their measurement of success. But one of the best stocks I've ever made was on a rock. Probably wouldn't have been too tasty, but you know, a big rock, I was 100% certain a mule deer was bedded behind because it disappeared in the middle of nowhere. And I went around the mountain, came down over this, took my boots off, put an arrow in my boots because I've heard of people not ever finding their boots again.
Yes, that is true.
Stuck an arrow in it so I could get back to my boots. You just aren't finding replacements for feet like mine anywhere. Um, and then snuck down through the cactus and whatnot. I'll tell you, when you're in your stocking feet, you're exceptionally careful about where you put your feet down in cactus country, especially. And that also by default makes you much quieter. So slower and quieter, and that's what wins a race when you're stalking in on something. Um, yeah, I remember a particular time, and it was hunting with a rifle in Africa, and I was sitting on the top of a kopie, which is it's a cliff or outcropping of rocks or something like that. And a professional hunter and my wife snuck around on a herd of wildebeest, combined black and blue wildebeest. And it was probably 350 yards off. And about halfway through the stalk, I was sitting up there with a mutual friend of the professional hunter and myself. And I asked him, I said, "Do you think my wife would be pissed off at me if I just shot one from here?" And, she's down there trying to make the stock to get in. My wife's a very good shot, so she could have probably shot one from there as well, but that's not what they like to do. In Africa, they want to get you under 100 yards if they can. And, she tells a story about all the broken off thorns she got in her hands and knees and whatever while she's trying to crawl up on this thing and that was more exciting than if I had just plugged one of those things from that kopie. And you know, I don't want to begrudge anybody else what they think is a good time. And I have had many good times hunting with a rifle, and will again. But the stalking is exciting. I hunt with a flintlock. Had a beautiful stalk in Colorado back in 2020, and should have resulted in a mule deer, a nice one. But I made a lot of the same mistakes and still had him in shooting distance, but only gave me a shot through a bush as he was standing there looking at me. And I thought I could get one of them round balls through there, but I was mistaken. So he was 30 yards away when I shot. And as soon as the gun went off, he jumped 5 yards closer to me. And then two more of his buddies walked in behind him. And those cotton picking deer just kept walking to me.
Oh
And
no.
next thing you know, they were in less than bow range. I mean, I would have had no difficulty taking one of those deer with a bow. And they knew I was there the whole time. I'm like, what is going on here? But that's just the way it is. Those
But
deer don't
those,
see that
you
many people.
remember that. I mean,
No, I'll never forget it.
yeah, you just remember the memories I have aren't about the animals I've killed. It's the animals and the closeness. And I don't shoot a lot of whitetails anymore. I shot a lot, but I still whitetail hunt because now I hunt off the ground just because I've got some issues. So I hunt off the ground, don't go up in the air. And I've had bucks feet from me, not yards, but literally feet. One was chasing another buck, and they came right at me, and I just sat there. I didn't move, and they just came barreling right at me. And I looked down. I said, "Gee," they were literally feet from me, and I didn't
Yeah,
move.
people have a hard time believing it until it
Well,
happens to them.
it's you know, and I just tell people. They said, "Well, why didn't you shoot them?" I said, "Well, they were moving pretty fast, and it was the best video you could ever have. And I've got that memory forever in my brain of those guys, 6 pointer and 8 pointer come barreling right at me. I'm going, holy fright.
Yeah. The
And
thought
it's
of
fun.
having an animal too close doesn't cross most people's mind. But quite honestly, and then you talk about the animals that we take with traditional or closer, well, if I had my druthers, I'd rather have an animal be at 10, 12, or 15 yards than I would at 5, 6, or 8.
Yeah,
I
I would
mean,
agree. I would agree.
gives me room to stretch my arm out anyway. You know, it's they can hear your heartbeat practically, but if it's right on top of them, they're much more likely to jump out of their skin than if they've got a 15 or even 20-yard separation between it. So it's not that you're ever going to get by a deer's senses or his ears or whatever, but you just don't want them thinking that you're in immediate danger to them.
Right.
You know,
And one thing I
it's
tell people all the time, I'm thinking back to the farm, and it was a morning sit, and the wind was right. It was right on my face, and this buck's coming up the fence row and gonna go into the corn, so forth and so on. So I was just snuggled down again on the ground, and I just said, I wonder how close he's gonna get. Then I wonder when he's gonna blow up when the wind hits him, because I was kind of like in a cubby, so I knew the wind was gonna swirl, even though the wind was in my face. And he
mm,
came through, he was 15 yards maybe. I could have shot him any number of times, and I didn't want to. And then he got right about where I thought, about my 10 o'clock, and he just blew up. He went inside out, dove into the corn, and I'm sitting there laughing because he had absolutely no idea I was there. So, Hutch's tip to anybody listen to this, sometime just observe the deer or the elk or whatever you're hunting. Just observe them and see where they hit the danger zone. So next time, if you're in a similar situation, you go, okay, he's going to blow up at my 10 o'clock. So I better take him between 11 and 1. And he'll never know you're there. He'll hear the string
yeah.
go, but he'll never know you're there. And it's so much fun to do that because you're not under the gun, you're calm, your breathing's good, and you're saying, okay, let's just see where this thing goes. So the next time you already know where he's going to blow up. So you're calmer, you got your stuff together, and you're going to make a good shot.
Well, you hope all that stuff works out.
Yeah,
The thing
there's
about
no
thing about
guarantees.
bow hunting, thing about bow hunting is it's a crapshoot, and you learn. That's what it's all about. You learn and you pray you don't make the same mistake twice. But there's 1,000 mistakes that you can make once, and if you make any one of those, you know, good chance you're going home and eating soup.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Well, and it's the fun of bow hunting. And
Yeah.
obviously you're a master at it. And in Georgia, how many deer can you take? How many bucks can you shoot a year?
So I suppose that they've got a few specialty draw hunts that don't apply to your normal allotment. I don't do those very well. I don't ever do those really. Never think to apply for them, but generally don't have enough time to hunt as much as I'd like to at home anyway. According to the state, if everything is the same, you can kill two, one of which has to fall into some specific regulations as far as horn size, which is fine by me. Typically wouldn't shoot a buck unless I wanted to mount him. There are, extenuating circumstances to that statement, but generally the way I do it. And we can shoot a total. I've never even come close to this, so I don't know what the total is, but somewhere around 11 to 13 deer a year without the extra applications. So if I take 5 or 6 deer, that's enough for, because I'll give deer meat to my employees, and we have friends come over and eat with us frequently, or family, or whatever it happens to be. And I would, for the most part, or my wife would, for the most part, substitute venison for beef most anytime. So we go through a lot of it. I don't always kill enough, but I figure it out. However,
Now, do you have to leave your 40 to hunt, or can you hunt right out your door?
I can hunt right out my door. In fact, I have had pictures, camera, multiple, dozens of pictures throughout the years of some very, very desirable whitetails. And a lot of people don't think Georgia has them, but I'm gonna tell you, they sure do. And I would say a near 150-inch 8-pointer, probably less than 100 yards from where I'm sitting right now, and that's where I got the picture. He could have walked by within 40 yards of my house of where I'm sitting. So, we got some nice bucks here, but I'm happy with those most of the time. Not that I wouldn't hunt for that buck, but when you're on 42 acres, it doesn't take long to booger it up.
Right.
So I'm a member of a group of guys in a lease of about 1,100 acres. And
All right. Must have got a phone call. Let's pause right now.
no idea what just happened there.
Well, if somebody called in, it would have kicked you off your phone.
Happened to speak.
I can hear you.
Are we back on?
Yeah,
Microphone
we're
is
back
unmuted.
on. We're
Okay.
good. This is Bruce Hutchin with Hutch on Hunting with Big Jim down in Georgia, talking about making traditional bows. And we had a slight
Your
technical
volume
difficulty.
somehow the volume's not quite right. I can't hear you like I did before.
Yeah. So why don't we just wrap it up, Jim? Just wrap up the show and we'll call it good.
Wrap up the show with the what?
Yeah, why don't you just wrap up the show? So tell people how to get a hold of you.
Okay.
And where your
yes,
website is and all that.
As you probably figured out by now, I am Big Jim. The business name is Big Jim's Bow Company. You can find in bigjimsbowcompany.com is the website. We are on all the regular social media platforms, or at least we're supposed to be. I don't know that I can spell any of them, but Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and whatever. But and you should be able to find contact information there. You need to send us an email, give us a phone call. We'll help you out where we can.
Jim, it's just been a pleasure, getting into an area that I really don't know anything about, but to talk to a guy that's been doing it for years and years, makes a quality product. So folks, if you ever want to investigate traditional bow hunting, get a hold of Big Jim at bigjimsbowcompany.com and have a chit chat with him. And just like for myself at hutchinhunting.com, we're here to help you. We're here to give you answers to your questions. I cover Colorado. That's what I do. But I have guests on the show all across the country, in the US, plus Canada. And sometimes they even go to Africa. I've done podcasts out of Africa. So having said that, thank you so much for listening. This is Hutch on Hunting wishing you a fantastic day.